Look, got it. We are now recording, as you all heard. So for the next two meetings, I decided that, we could stop with the format that we've been doing where we've sort of been having this mini panel session of outside experts, which is really fun and interesting. And I think it has been really good for us. But I feel like we've sort of lost touch a tiny, tiny bit with what's actually happening inside our very own network. And all of you have been working so hard over the last year. And there's been some pretty big updates. So this time we're going to hear from Aaron and from Katie Swanson about the huge changes that have happened in their regions and the really, really big shifts in strategy and actual work that's happening on the ground in their regions. And then in our next session in December, which is I think is just a couple of days before the Christmas holiday, for those of you who can make it, we'll take the time to reintroduce ourselves to each other because we have a lot of new folks that have been joining over the last year, and talk about what we've done this year, things that we want to look at next year, and basically just get back in touch with each other. And then starting up back up in January, we'll bring on our outside experts and do that kind of training and Q&A session with those folks again. So all that said, Katie or Aaron, do either one of you have a preference as to who goes first? And do either one of you have an actual a presentation at all, or are we good? I didn't think
No,
so.
super simple. I don't care who goes first. I have it written on my little notepad.
I love it. Well, since you're talking, how about you go?
Yeah.
And just sort of give us the lay of the land of where you were and what's happening now. And if you can talk about partnerships that you've built along the way, I think that would be really helpful.
Okay. So I am the executive director at Umpqua Valley Farm to School here in Roseburg, which is southwestern Oregon. We participated in a food hub assessment in 2020. It started the beginning of 2020 and wrapped up in December. And Thrive Umpqua, Ford Family Foundation, NeighborWorks, and the city of Roseburg did it. And Thrive Umpqua was Blue Zones at the time. We wanted to assess if I wasn't part of the food hub assessment originally. I participated in it, but I was not one of the people that initiated it. But they wanted to assess whether we could sustain a physical food hub here in Douglas County or not. We have a ton of farms. We export a lot of goods. We're in an area where people are really supportive of local foods. And so we thought it was a good time to look into that. So the assessment ended up, the end results gave us 7 categories to work on. They said, we're not ready for a physical food hub. And he ended up looking at all of southwestern Oregon. So Jackson, Josephine, Coos, Curry, and Douglas County. And the categories were like transportation, online marketplace, coordinated production between producers. I can't even remember what the rest of them were, but food access was one. So we got together. That's where Umpqua Valley Farm to School stepped in, and we were like, we'll take over, because no one in Douglas County had the capacity to take over this role. And that was one of our original missions, was to build a food hub here. So we took over and partnered with Rogue Valley Food Systems Network and Otterbee's Marketplace at the coast. And Otterbee's a for-profit, and then ourselves and Rogue Valley are nonprofits. So we created SOFA, which is Southern Oregon Food Alliance. And we did a few meetings after that with all the stakeholders that were involved. We had about 50 people, I think, at one of our meetings. And went over the categories, but the categories were a little bit confusing because there was a lot of overlap in them, and they were meant to overlap. But we were just finding areas like that we didn't really, they weren't as needed as others. And like at first we talked about, like a food hub is for profit. We need to make money on that. But food access was one of the really big things that kept popping up. Like, we need more food access points. And so it was kind of like we had to take a big step back. So we worked with Rogue Valley Food Systems and Otterbee's for quite a while, going over like we had meetings and went over what we wanted to focus on, but we felt like we were kind of just spinning our wheels. So we took a big step back. We stopped doing our meetings together and just kind of worked on our own regions. And so it all just kind of grew organically from that. The Thrive Umpqua, which was formerly Blue Zones, we have a food policy committee. And so with the food policy committee, we have the food bank is part of it, the Feeding Umpqua. Oh, thank you for posting that feasibility study. Feeding Umpqua is part of it. And we just look at like areas in Douglas County that we can improve the food system. And so a lot of work is still happening around grocery store initiatives, like how do we get a grocery store downtown? So we're really working a lot on that right now. But also from that feasibility study, it's not even in the feasibility study. We keep talking about it being in that, and it's really not. But after talking to producers and hosting our meetings and things, we heard a lot of people needed a commercial kitchen. We don't have one in Southwestern Oregon. I think Fry Family Farm might have one, and I don't know if they are leasing it out. I can't remember. And then Cottage Grove is the next closest, and then Eugene and Portland. So we have a ton of, and Douglas County is huge. So we have a ton of producers that needed a commercial kitchen other than a church that's not licensed, that has home equipment. So we had an opportunity. Yep, Bohemia is in Cottage Grove and they're awesome. So we had an opportunity to open a commercial kitchen, and one just happened to be available that had previously been a kitchen. So we're leasing that now, and we're about to open in the next couple weeks. So that's super exciting. We sent out an assessment and had about 25 people respond, and that's just like emails and social media. It's not like advertising like radio or really pushing it out there much at all. So 25 food-based businesses are ready to use this commercial kitchen, and I have people knocking on my door almost literally right now, like calls every day. Josephine Grange, sorry. Yeah, I have people calling me constantly asking when we're going to open. So we're almost there. We've got about 2 weeks. We've had Oregon Department of Ag come check it out, and there's a couple things we have to work on. And then part of the commercial kitchen, we hope to eventually do pop-up happy hour markets, or happy hour market and a pop-up market, whatever, where we have producers that are using the kitchen sell their goods. And then we'll have farmers, they can do like produce boxes. We have a really great farmers market, so we don't want to compete with that, but our kitchen is downtown, which is sort of a food desert. And so we want to have produce boxes that people can just kind of grab and go. And then the online marketplace, yeah, you can just ask questions as you go. The online marketplace, we're not really set up to be an actual food hub yet, but we want to have an online marketplace where on our, can I share my screen? Am I able to do that?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna share it. Okay, so I hate all these little things in the way. So this is our commercial kitchen webpage. It's not complete yet, but as part of this, like we have the fees and the equipment that we have for use. And then eventually we want to get to where the commercial kitchen page is similar to our Umpqua Grown Guide, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But our Umpqua Grown Guide came about after working with Rogue Valley Food Systems so much, and their Rogue Flavor Guide, and then there's so many other like local food guides around the state. So we created our own. Thank you to all the people that helped on that too. It was definitely not something we completely came up with. But on this page, this is our website that goes along with the print copies of the food guide. And so you can click on like farms and ranches, and that'll take you to all the local farms and ranches. So eventually we want our kitchen page to be similar to this, where you can click on, let's see. If you want to buy from Jackson Street Provisions, they're a physical store, so they wouldn't really do this, but it'll take you directly to that person, like that producer's page, and you can just order from them. So it's sort of our workaround for the online marketplace. And you can also just unmute if you have questions along the way. I know I have some things out of order in here. Okay, so I'm going to move on from the commercial kitchen, so I'll just stop sharing that. The Umpqua Grown Guide has been really huge in kind of bringing awareness to local foods in Douglas County. We have quite a few restaurants that use a little bit of local foods. A big problem is still transportation, you know, like how are they going to get, aside from going to the farmer's market every weekend, how are they going to get their local produce each week? Yeah, it's Umpqua Valley Farm to School running all this. So we're doing a producer buyer gathering in January here in Roseburg, where we hope to get a lot more restaurants to come. I do farm to school too, so we'll have a lot of schools there too, but it's all pretty similar. So we just want to kind of partner producers together. There's a few producers that are driving around the county, and our county's like 5,000 square miles, I think. So there's like one producer driving 2 hours to the coast every Monday to drop off stuff. So we're trying to partner producers together to make those deliveries, make it easier on everyone, and then also increase the amount of products that are getting into local restaurants. Because that's like one of the biggest challenges right now. I mean, there's like a big lettuce shortage where people are using, I don't know what the deal is with lettuce. If any of y'all know, share it. But the cost went up like 3 times. So it's like almost the same or more than buying from a local farm. So we're like promoting local farms. But restaurants and things are finally like, wow, we can buy local produce. This is awesome. And local beef is a big thing here too. Let's see. So we hope, so for that, I don't have the details worked out for the producer buyer gathering, but I can share it when we do in case any of you guys want to show up to it. So partnerships, we partner with the local food bank. Like I said, food access ended up being a huge part that we didn't think we wanted to work on with the food hub. But that's one of the biggest, that's one of the biggest areas of need here is just increasing access for food desert communities to fresh fruit and vegetables. So we do programs in the summer where we partner with a food bank and deliver produce boxes to families in areas that they're not hitting. Has anyone cracked the code of coordinating individual producers and delivery without using a hub? That's kind of what we're doing. We do have producers that they don't mind taking other people's stuff. They even share, like at the market, they'll take their products because one guy grows figs and they actually retired, but they still want to sell their figs at the market. So they partner and they'll help with deliveries and stuff too. Nothing formal yet, like nothing in writing, and this is what we're going to do every week, but they are willing, like a lot of our producers are willing to take other farms' supplies out with them when they go visit schools to drop off. We also use the ESD a little bit. Oh, hey, I'm glad Abigail's on here. So yeah, we use the ESD. It's the Education Service District. So most counties have them, and they can deliver a little bit of stuff. Like we do seeds and stuff for schools, but we've done produce deliveries too. We've actually partnered with them and used their van to make the produce box deliveries.
What's EFD?
The ES, like Sam. It's the Education Service District. So like we have Douglas ESD, and they provide trainings and resources, and they make copies and like do all kinds of stuff for all the school districts in our county. But they've made a lot of deliveries for us, like because they go to every school every week. And so we can just talk to them and like, hey, we have all this stuff that needs to go out to each of these schools. Can you guys take it with you? Because they're driving a whole van out there and the van's never all the way full. So yeah, we can partner with them on occasion and get stuff out, which is really helpful. Let's see. So we're working to partner on the transportation. We just, you guys probably all saw, but we just, ODA and Amy Gilroy got the USDA grant to do the farm to institution work. So we're working on that. We've actually had a lot of people contact us like, hey, we have this open land we'd like to lease out to producers to use. So that's super exciting. No, they don't charge for deliveries at all, which is awesome. Because I mean, you can't really schedule it to like, hey, go to this school and drop this off. But ours go to every school at least once a week. So we just, if it's non-perishable, we just coordinate with them, drop it off, and they'll take it out there. So the farm to institution thing's exciting. And then I just recently joined the Friends of Family Farmers board because we don't have a lot of folks in our region that are part of that. And I think that's a huge step here towards just expanding our local food system a bit more too. So I'm really excited to be part of that and work with them on a statewide level, but also bring their resources to our county a lot more. Okay, I think that's it. So feel free to ask questions. Oh, SOFA is going to have a regional meeting in person in January 2024, I believe. And Abigail can chime in on that too.
Are we all invited?
Yes, I hope. Yeah, we do hope everyone comes to it. Is that Shin? That's what you're helping with too, Shin, right? The 2024. Yeah. Yes. So I hope you all do come.
What questions do we have out there? I have about 800, so I could totally hog the floor, but I feel like there's probably other folks that would like to know more about what's going on. Really? Lindsay, it looks like you have one.
I have a question, but I'm not, it's not necessarily just for Erin, it might be for everyone that we get. I know you mentioned commercial kitchen and you have this big interest in it. So I'm based out of Ontario and we are in the process of doing our feasibility study for a community food center with a potential shared use kitchen. And we're doing our community engagement events, asking about kind of the needs of our producers as well as community members. And of course, everyone's like, yes, commercial kitchen for food business startup or value added products and things like that. But Oregon Food Bank is also hesitant to put all of this money and infrastructure into this very, very expensive and fixed equipment and then have it be sitting not being used. And so we're looking at providing a kitchen that maybe it meets mostly both needs, I guess, where it's somewhat flexible and might have some different stations. But I'm still learning, like, the difference between, okay, what exactly does a commercial kitchen need to have versus this commissary or shared use? Is there a way to make it flexible so that we can kind of meet both needs without exhausting all resources and then having it sit empty? So any advice or input that you've received about that, or that maybe has already been discussed at these meetings that I missed, let me know.
So our commercial kitchen's small. It's one station. It's pretty much one producer at a time, unless two producers can agree that their products won't overlap. Like one person can use the prep area and one person can use the kitchen space. We only have one stove. It's a 6-burner gas, like commercial quality stove. We've got the ovens, the refrigerators, the freezers. But yeah, we just had, ODA came and checked it out. I can send you the assessment so you can see the questions and stuff too, or I'll send it to
just to share out. I think that would be super helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can see the questions on it. But we sent that out, and part of it was asking what folks needed in their kitchen. We don't have, we definitely do have enough need to have a kitchen space that has more than one station in it at a time. But to start out, this kitchen that we're renting was already a commercial kitchen years ago. So it had a lot of the equipment in it. But yeah, I would just, I would not go huge to start. I don't think. Send a survey out to your producers and the community and see what their needs are. Ours, a lot of the people are baking in it, and so they don't need refrigerator, freezer space. We toured other commercial kitchens too. So we went up to Portland, we toured Hummingbird, or not Portland, Eugene. We toured Hummingbird, and then we went to Bohemia, and they were both really awesome about sharing resources and things too. So definitely do that and see what their needs are. So it's on our website. I'll stick it in the chat.
Lindsay,
That
what
was one
was
of
the second? Oh, sorry, Aaron.
Okay.
Lindsay, what was the second user type that you were talking about that you were trying to accommodate for in your question?
Oh, just saying the community, right? I mean, because like food access that has been, but
Like
it-
makers and potentially pantry or programming. I think you could absolutely run
Yeah.
those two kinds of programs through that same kitchen. Like most of your, like if you were doing nutrition programming, that's going to happen at discrete times. So you're really managing the same kind of process as you would be if you were renting to an entrepreneur that is like, you know, working on their product to sell. You're just managing the time slots available. And then of course the management of the kitchen, just super
Oh,
easy.
and we're using Food Corridor. Check out different
I have heard
softwares
about
and
that
things.
because Kim with Bohemia, I think, is the one that maybe shared that.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and they're awesome. They do everything. Like I don't have time to do all that stuff. And so
Right.
it's $2,000 per year, but I was like, the time that I'm going to spend on that's going to be way over $2,000. So we're just paying the Food Corridor. What was I going to say? The prices are on there. So that was one of the survey questions too, like what
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
price range can you afford to pay? Because eventually we want to offer like a sliding scale for people that are just starting out that don't have funds to pay for the kitchen yet. And then we had producers that are totally fine with paying $20 an hour. So I was like, okay, there's definitely a need for a sliding scale. And we don't want to like turn people away that can't afford it, that really want to start up their new business. So we're not doing that just yet, but eventually we do hope to do that. My internet is ridiculously slow today, so I'm trying to open the survey so I can share that with you, but not happening.
You're nonprofit, correct? Is everyone nonprofit?
We're
Are there any-
nonprofit.
No one's for profit here.
I think there were some for-profit, like Bohemia just
Bohemia is both. Carly can speak to that. Or has operated as a for-profit and is now doing its programming as a nonprofit. Agricultural Connections, which is not on the call, is also for-profit. Gorge Farmer Collective is also for-profit, but the for-profits mostly are doing slightly different things. Oh, sorry, Christy. Yes, Christy's for-profit as well, and is also kind of in that category of not running a kitchen and not running food access programs in the same way that the nonprofits are.
Christy, no, we don't want to have to sell their stuff. So it's going to have to be the producers. Like right now, I don't want to have to deal with that. So it's going to be, because it's just me and 2 AmeriCorps members. So we're finally getting to the point. I'm going to hire a couple people soon. But we still want it to be where the producers sell their own stuff. So like when we do the pop-up market or the happy hour market, the producers will have to be there with their little table and sell their own stuff. Instead of paying in product. Like eventually that would be really great. But I think in the next 2 years, we'll have to expand to a much bigger location. And at that point, I forgot to talk about this part. At that point, it was one of these calls, Elliot from Washington, something. When he was talking, I was like, we can totally we're already doing a lot of what he's doing. So it made me, this year, we're going to revisit the physical food hub and like how we can size down from what the feasibility study results were and make it work, because we're doing so much of this stuff already. So yeah, within the next 2 or 3 years, I do think that we're going to have to expand to a bigger facility. Yes, he was awesome. So that we can do more of this work and have a bigger kitchen. We're going to do cooking classes and things in our kitchen, but yeah, hoping to, I definitely think we're at a really great, like COVID in our region sort of brought out all the local eaters and people who wanted local products. We saw huge growth in our local farms and farmers market throughout the pandemic. So it's just been like a really weird time. Like, no, I don't think most people would think that would be the time that this would expand, but it really has taken off. So we're excited to grow in the next few years.
Aaron, I just think it's so cool what you all have done over the last couple of years. I remember when you presented that feasibility study way back when. I feel like it has been a couple years, year and a half, 2 years. And and at that time, it seemed really daunting. And, this feasibility study really said, you don't have enough of anything to make these things happen. And in that time, instead of walking away, feeling very sad and dejected and like, well, I guess we're done, you all as a group down there in Southern Oregon really sort of took that information and starting, you built some more coalition, you did a bunch of meetings in there that were, like, what are these meetings for? And you figured out how to do some things together. And where you are now compared to that moment when that feasibility study came out is unreal. You really, really have done a tremendous amount. And to hear you saying, we're doing a lot of what Elliot's doing. Like, we need to do more of that. Like, that is like, I can't even imagine you saying that 2 years ago. And
it was,
so all of you involved should be really proud of where you've come to.
yeah, we definitely felt really defeated. And I'm sure Abigail can speak up too. During our SOFA meetings, we often were like, we feel like we're just spinning the wheels, like nothing's getting done. We're talking about the same thing at every meeting, but a ton has been done when we took a step back. And, it's frustrating because SOFA, we don't meet as often as we'd like anymore, I don't think, but we're still doing the work. So when we do meet, I feel like we have so much to share that nothing, like, we don't get to share it all. But sort of stepping back and working on our own regions. And then Otterbees, Kathleen stopped partnering with us. She still shows up to the BEAT consortium. I don't know if Jamar is on here from the BEAT out in Coos Bay, but they're really doing some awesome stuff in Coos Bay. So I think that'll cover sort of the coastal region eventually of the our regional food system network here.
Well, do we have any other questions for Erin? All right, go for it, and then you can present.
Okay. This might be a dumb question, but as everything you're talking about, the actual activities happening under the Farm to School organization, the Umpqua Farm to School?
Yeah, so far it's Umpqua Valley Farm to School. Our kitchen is a DBA, but yeah. So
Okay.
I've been thinking about like changing, I don't know. Yeah, it's all Umpqua Valley Farm to School, but I'm like, do I change the name or change? I mean, our mission statement still covers everything that we're doing. But yeah, I'm like, do we break off eventually the food system work that we're doing, or just keep it? I mean, I probably will have to at some point, like, separate the two somewhat. It'll still be one nonprofit and then these different channels. Yep.
It helps because Farm to School just has so much support statewide. So it just gives me this added boost of capacity and energy and food systems.
Yeah, and I will say that food systems work in the commercial kitchen, what Abigail said, that Farm to School has a lot of statewide support. They do. Food systems and commercial kitchens are a little bit different with getting grants. You definitely have to, they're way more competitive. The commercial kitchens, we just wrote one grant and they didn't understand what we were trying to do at all. They thought it was a retail establishment and they were like, we can't support a business. It has to be a nonprofit. And I'm like, we are, but yeah, they didn't fund us because they said there were plenty of other kitchens around here in the churches and things. And I was like, oh, do you want me to out them, Lauren? It was a Roundhouse. And I had met with them and interviewed with them and explained what we were doing. And then they were like, they said I actually called because I was like, wow, we got funded 1/10 of what we asked for. And she was like, yeah, it's because a lot of comments in the notes say that there's so many other kitchens available in the area. And I was like, there aren't. So it's just
yeah, I mean, just can I add on that? The reason I asked is because I think you all have seen, who have been working on this for a long time, that there has been a real, there's a lot of learning. There have been a lot of commercial kitchens started and they're just sitting there, as someone previously alluded to, right? And there are ways to make these things like really fit the needs of what people, and so part of this is just communicating that, yes, we know about that. And this is not the commercial kitchen you think it is. So this is part of the overall, and this is something what we try to do as this hub club is to talk about, Sydney often writes me reports and she says, here are all the hubbenings, right? Like not everything calls itself a hub. So this is a larger communication thing that we can do together so that, and I understand Roundhouse, they need to see the big picture in order to see how it fits in. So that's something we can all do as a network.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to meet with them again in February, but I definitely, one of the things I want to do is like give them examples of other commercial kitchens. Like, this is what we're trying to do here. This is what we're missing. And we did post the results of the assessment and stuff too, but just wasn't the right time for that one. But it's, it's a little trickier because people a lot of times don't understand, like, oh, you're trying to open a restaurant or a kitchen that you're going to, it's going to be this big profit making business. Like, no. So, okay, I think I'm done.
Erin, that was amazing. Thank you for doing that. Next up, we have Katie from Klamath Grown. And I don't know if y'all remember if it was December or January. It was almost a year ago that Katie came to this group and have been struggling with, what do we do with Klamath Farmers online marketplace? It's a struggle to keep it alive. We can't afford to pay someone, or can we afford to pay someone? We've been doing it out of our back pockets for a long time. Hub Club help us. And the Hub Club did sort of a work session together, and we talked about what Katie understood about Klamath Farmers online marketplace, and talked about, what we understand about what you might be able to do with that. And since that time, Katie and her business partners have completely changed what they do and are on this amazing new trajectory. So Katie, take it away.
Thanks, Sydney. Yeah, lots has happened in the last year. Your question of like, where were we a year ago was, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I cried at one of these meetings. It was a rough time. Yeah, so we, a year ago, we were LLC, 3-member LLC owned by 3 farmers. Myself, I'm a vegetable farmer. My partner, Kelsey Randall, is a rancher, and then another farmer, Rick Walsh. And we were, it was like, season 2 of COVID. We were super burnt out, and we're trying to figure out, asking those big questions that Sydney, mentioned, kind of like, the community wants us to do this. There's demand for us to do more, but we have no capacity to do more, or even to continue what we're currently doing. Because we were functioning so far beyond our actual capacity, and didn't have any funding for staff or anything like that. And so, so Sydney was huge. The technical support and the financial projections and those conversations were incredibly helpful. So we really looked at what are our actual goals and mission, and what would it take to be able to continue to do that, both, and kind of comparing like the options, basically LLC, cooperative or nonprofit. And we realized that we weren't willing to charge the prices that we would have needed to do to maintain any kind of financial viability, and be an LLC. And that kind of conversation led us to, we are very mission oriented and actually functioning like a nonprofit, but without any funding or resources that nonprofits get. And so, so that was kind of a big shifting point when we made that decision. And we surveyed our we did 2 different surveys. We surveyed the producers that we had been working with that were selling through the online market. And we also surveyed community partners. So there's lots of different organizations in town that we've worked with over the past 5 years. And just to get an idea of like, what are we doing that's good and helpful for you? What else could we do? And it was kind of cool to see actually how consistent the answers were and the results were. So Kelsey and I kind of put together a strategic plan, worked with Sydney on getting some numbers attached to those plans, and essentially put together like a proposal that we presented to both the producers and our community partners, to kind of just make sure we were communicating and get a feel for where people were at and what they, you know, really wanted from us, and also trying to ask the question to the community of like, hey, how can you support this? We know that you want this and you value this and it's important, but how can you help us make this continue? And how can we really make this like a community effort? So yeah, and we talked to Kim. Sydney connected us with Kim. We had a super helpful conversation about like that transition from for-profit to nonprofit. And we ended up actually hiring the same consultants that Kim used to do a lot of that 501c3 stuff. We're actually still in process with that. We really dragged it along for a while. The state level nonprofit was easy, but the federal 501c3, not so much. But it really kind of forced us to have those like conversations, figuring out what we really valued and stuff. So anyway, we kind of took like the resources we got from you guys and the Food Hub and the resources we got locally in the input, and decided to move forward. We were able to get enough money to hire those consultants, and that was really exciting. So we could get that process started because we knew we couldn't do it on our own. And we started to build a board. One kind of big turning point, I guess, one tricky thing we had to figure out was like this organization so far has been farmer run, and we're really proud of that. And I think that's contributed to a lot of the success that we've had, with just moving products and kind of meeting the needs of the producers. But the hard part about that is that it's really hard to kind of take care of everything with like producers' free time. And so we had a lot of conversations about how do we start this nonprofit, create a board of people that have the skills and time that we need, and continue to keep the voice of the farmers. And so that's been kind of a tricky thing. We also ran into, it was interesting, Erin brought up some of that kind of nonprofit and for-profit, like running a market. So like that's our main thing, is we run this online market. But we really ran into, with the lawyers we were working for that was doing this 501c3 paperwork, they're like, you can't have a board of farmers running a nonprofit online market that they're all benefiting from. And I was like, why not? I don't understand what's wrong with that. And so kind of having lots of like representation questions. And so what we've settled on right now is that we're going to have a 5-member board. One of those board members will be a producer. It'll be made very clear that that producer is expected to not represent their own business interests, but producers as a whole. And to help with that, we are going to create a producer advisory committee, which is run, like kind of managed along with staff. That producer board member plus a staff member will run that advisory committee. And so that committee actually has a vote on the board, rather than being kind of this committee that might fade away and doesn't actually have any power. Because as a farmer myself, it's really, really important, I think, that we have like serious representation by farmers on our board. So that's so far, that's our angle of trying to kind of get around this nonprofit board issue with having business owners on it. So yes, the conflict of interest disclosure form, that it was interesting. I talked to Food Roots about that, and the attorney seemed to think that was not enough. Anyway, we've kind of gone in circles in this conversation, and I've been very stubborn about it, but because I really believe strongly in this. But yeah, so yeah, no, this is great because I've really been seeking, like, how do we do this? Anyway, so we started kind of working on the mission statement as a board. We got some really great people to join the team, and it felt really, really good to have a team. Oh, sorry. Meanwhile, sorry, I feel like I'm just rambling. Meanwhile, we closed the market in December, or at the end of last year. So basically after the holidays, we said we were closing the market for the winter so that we could work on all of this stuff, because we knew we couldn't kind of do everything. The thing about a year-round online market is that it never stops. So anyway, we said we'd close for winter, and 1 year later we're reopening, because this stuff always takes longer than you think. But anyway, so yeah, and then we started applying for grants, and ran into, again, a lot of issues, funders being confused about what we were doing. Are you running a for-profit market? One grant we got turned down because they felt like increasing access wasn't our actual focus. It was just a byproduct of our work. And so just really kind of entering into this new territory as farmers, and kind of trying to figure out what kind of language we use and how, where is access in our mission? What role do we play with that? And what we've really come to is a much broader mission for the organization. One of the programs we run is the online market, but the online market no longer is everything that we do. And so I kind of put it into 3 buckets. We support producers, we promote local food, and we increase access to local food. And one of the great things about the online market is it does all of those things. And that is one of the programs that we run. So that's kind of how we've moved forward and framed our work. So we've gotten a little bit better. We've gotten a clear vision. We had some losses that were rough, but then we started to get some wins. And so with support from community partners, so like OSU, Patty Case works at OSU Extension. She's been really, really helpful in applying for grants. So that resource has been essential for us because we didn't really come to this with grant writing experience. And so Patty helped us apply for a rare AmeriCorps member who is on this call, Sarah, and she's been wonderful. And that actually got funded by the Oregon Food Bank. They sponsored that position. So that was huge for us. Yeah, Sarah, I could talk all day about how wonderful Sarah is. And then we got a donation from a private foundation. That was really huge. That actually allowed us to actually take me and Kelsey off of the board and start just paying us as staff to kind of keep this work going. So that was like the first time that we actually had staff. And we were able to hand off a lot of the board responsibilities to, and I'm no longer president of the board. We have a new president of the board. I am a staff member. Kelsey is a staff member. We're both part-time. She's director of operations. I'm director of community relations. We wanted to stay away from like one executive director position. We wanted it to be a team effort. So that's kind of the approach that we took. And so, we looked into the different types of nonprofits, like the associations of like different like producers and things like that. But we were worried about if we didn't get the 501c3, we were worried about not being able to apply for grants. So anyway, so we had some wins that were really a huge turning point for us. And then And then just a few weeks ago, we found out we got the FMPP, which was just like the most exciting thing in the world. And that was like a brutal process to have a bunch of new people that don't know how to write grants together with Patty Case, who is good at grants. And a bunch of you guys, like a lot of people in this group really helped review the application. Sydney, Lauren, Katrina, Abigail, like a lot of people wrote letters of support. Like, cannot thank you all enough for that. So that's a really big deal. And it feels like we're actually getting some funding to be able to do the things that we want to do. So Sarah, one of her big projects is she's working on a directory that's going to live on our website, a local food directory that maybe someday will be in print. We are reopening the market in, 3 weeks. We just hired a market manager to run the market, which is like a dream come true. I don't have to run the market anymore. Sarah, part of Sarah's work plan is to start working on building regional relationships and kind of a lot of what you guys are talking about, like how do we get products here? How do we get some of our products, Rogue Valley, Bend, how do we bring in regional products? Because one of our goals and one thing that was very, very popular with our local like producers and community partners is a collective CSA model. And so we really want to pursue that. And that's actually part of our FMPP grant. So year one, we're going to be trying to lay some of the groundwork. And then year two, hopefully piloting a collective CSA. And one thing that we know is that we don't have the local production that we would need consistently enough, diverse enough to fill like a collective CSA, which is why those regional relationships are so important. So we have a lot of logistics to figure out how to make that happen. And we also know we just need to do some programming to support local farmers here so we can get to the point where we really do have the product that we need. Because we have a shortage of local produce for sure. We need much, much more than we're able to produce right now. Good question, Carrie, about the educational component into our nonprofit. So a lot of, again, we don't have our 501c3 status. So this is just like what we're working on. But the educational piece, we really do want to do kind of two different types of education. One is just educating the community about local food. So that includes things like the directory. I think we'll be working with local partners through OSU and Healthy Klamath to do some broader, where do you find your local food? What's in season? How do you cook it? All those things. So there's that educational piece. And then we also want to do some educational programming, like hosting workshops and things like that for our local producers. So that's kind of the educational piece of that. What else? Oh, we are reopening the market in our old location, but we have an opportunity to move hopefully in spring into a really cool building that's actually owned by a board member who's very enthusiastic about local food. So I think we're going to end up having a home that we're pretty excited about. We don't have all the funding and everything figured out, but we're excited about that. And then another big thing is we don't have any delivery. And so a lot of those logistics of like, if you want restaurants to have local food, you have to bring it to them. And so that's at least my experience working with restaurants. So that's something we would like to add in the future. But for now, we just have pickup, weekly pickup for the online market. So lots of things going on. I feel like I just was pretty scattered, but
What questions do we have? I think you already touched on the education one that has come up. Are there other questions that have popped up for folks? I'm sort of curious, Katie, if you were speaking to somebody who was asking you about this process, Like, what would be a top of mind thing that you would want them to understand about doing the work of transforming, you know, your online marketplace or your for-profit that you realize actually needs to be a nonprofit? Like, what do you want people to know about that? Or what took you by surprise, maybe?
I think just the amount of time that it took, and so much of that is kind of the time is relationship building, building a team, you know, because building that board, I think that process took longer than I thought. And really making sure everybody felt like we were at the ground level. You know, this isn't my project. This isn't me and Kelsey's baby anymore. This is all of ours. And that kind of process, that just takes time. And then going through those conversations of like, what's important to this whole group? What, you know, what are our goals? What's our mission? So giving lots of time for that. And then meanwhile, you have to be applying for funding, right? And so that takes time. So I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's what surprised me. It was like, okay, we're going to be nonprofit. We'll just like get the paperwork taken care of and like move on. No, nope. So that's probably what surprised me the most.
Yeah, it is a lot of time. And just as you were explaining your relationships and how you surveyed the community, surveyed farmers, surveyed the communities, then started working on this idea of board development, like that took, I mean, you're sort of still doing it, right? Like it's a pretty big deal to pull all of those folks together and start speaking in a unified voice.
Yeah. And then there's, you know, there's some relationship stuff too. You know, we really need to work on our relationship with the farmers market. You know, just because there's, you know, it's challenging. They're a market, we're a market, but we also really want to more broadly just support the food system and local producers, whether they sell on the Klamath Grown market or not. And somebody asked, oh, the charging the membership fee. So far it hasn't been an issue, but we haven't actually submitted the final paperwork yet. So I'm not sure if the lawyers haven't brought that up as an issue, charging a membership fee to producers. I don't know. Has anybody had problems with that?
I'm curious if that's similar to a farmer's market, because like, don't farmers markets charge a fee and then they're a nonprofit too? So yeah, I'm curious how that works.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I really have run into a lot of issues comparing ourselves to, that's another thing that wasn't as simple. I thought almost every farmer's market is a nonprofit. This should be fairly simple. We're just like a farmer's market. And I don't know, the more into the weeds we got, it was not that simple. And a lot of people said, well, most farmers markets, they're getting more strict now. And so most farmers market, if they applied right now, they probably want to get 501c3 status. I was very surprised by that. And this is all through the lawyers we're working with at Rational Unicorn. But oh yeah, fiscal sponsor, I forgot to mention that. That was another really big thing. I think one mistake we made after we did this presentation to our local partners, we really felt like we could just get this nonprofit stuff taken care of fairly quickly. And we did not seriously pursue a fiscal sponsor. And then that ended up being a huge barrier because we couldn't accept donations. And so we ended up, luckily, just a few months ago, we got a fiscal sponsor through the local hospital foundation, which technically Healthy Klamath is part of the foundation and we have a good relationship with them. So that was huge, getting a fiscal sponsor. And that really just bought us time.
Sydney, I know we only have a couple of seconds left, but I only take 15, 20 minutes, so don't worry. But w- as I listen and I participate at whatever level, I go through both sides of the experience. Definitely PTSD. Okay, coming out of what we've been doing in Gresham or Rockwood the last 7+ years, but to see it, it's pretty generic. I mean, we all pretty much go through the same thing. If when that we don't know that we all have went or either going through that experience. So I enjoy it when I hear, for instance, Katie, probably 80% of what she was saying is like, okay, I remember that. Okay, yeah. They're almost on the side of it. Just don't give up. Okay, but yeah, I appreciate the hub and what's being said and done.
Yeah, I think don't give up is another one of those words to live by. It does. All of this takes time. The relationship building takes time. And I don't know why we all kind of, I mean, I'm deeply guilty of it as well, sort of show up and think, it's not going to take that long. It's you file some paperwork and you move on. It's like, oh, right. All of those relationships that are critical to underpinning the whole endeavor, those take time. It takes time to find the right people. It takes time to agree that you want to work together. All of it takes a lot of time. So
Yes.
I commend you on that, on understanding that and taking that time. For those of you who were asking about fees and whatnot, Christy has a couple of comments threaded throughout about farmers markets are organized under a different nonprofit status, which is the association status, which is C6. And that has slightly different rules and, well, maybe not slightly, has different rules and reasons for being than the 501c3 that Katie is putting together. Some, not all. Yeah.
Hey,
So you can,
Sydney.
yeah.
Sydney, this is Jasmine from the
Hey,
Plattsburgh
Jasmine.
Farmers Market. We actually are a 501c3, and that's because our market had an educational component to it initially. So there might be some other nonprofits out there or some other farmers markets that are 501c3s.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I know they're not every single one of them is, but I do know that several of them are.
And we accept a vendor application fee. It's not like a membership fee, but that's, it's an annual fee. And so I don't know if there's just like a different wording that could be clarifying for that.
Great, thank you. Who else has questions? Awesome. I wanted to take a little time to ask this group. I have the first couple of meetings sorted out of the topics for the next year, but we haven't checked in together as a group to talk about what it is we want to learn over the course of the next year. And clearly, board composition came up as an issue in this meeting. Are there other topics that as a group we want to find some more resources, and we don't have to have all the answers today. If you don't have anything off the top of your head and something comes up later, please reach out to me. But we're starting a new year and a new group learning. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Abigail, I think you just raised your hand.
Well, this year, the Rogue Valley Food System Network is partnering with Travel Southern Oregon to help with their food trail. And I know it's kind of a common partnership with some of the more like food hub related businesses. But I got to go to a couple conferences with Travel Oregon, and there's like not a lot of representation for food system folks in those spaces, but they have all these priorities around sourcing local food and like providing restaurants and food businesses with local producer connections, and they just like don't have the resources or like knowledge to do so. And I think it could be a really awesome like space for a lot of these organizations to fit into. And I've provided them with like a list of the food hubs and just like connecting them with different people to reach out to. But it would be a cool group of people to invite into this space and share like what they're doing and what their resources are. And they have a lot of funding behind tourism, the tourism industry. So it could be a good partner for a lot of these.
Awesome. That's a great idea. What else do we have out there? Yes, Carrie.
I just want to add to what Abigail said, that I'm on the Rogue Valley Food Trail and I've been working with them for about 2 years, and they have come back to me offering the program, like it's a digital marketing analysis, that they've come back to me as a Food Trail member and offered a analysis basically of all my marketing. And then they come back and they provide like a plan for you to improve your outreach in the community and how to connect that with the tourism industry. So I'm really looking forward to that. They've invited and approved my participation. So I'm excited to see how that impacts the food system.
I love it. I love it. What other thoughts do we have out there for meeting topics? And again, if you don't have one right now and you come up with one later, please just drop me an email.
I already put it in the comments a while ago. I don't know if it was just to you, Sydney, or to everyone, but board members. I love my board members, but finding board members that can really like do the work instead of, yeah, we're at a board meeting. I would love to hear like how other folks decided, like how do you recruit board members? Do you just let anyone apply, or do you specifically reach out to certain board members? How does that work? And then like position descriptions for them, and as well as executive director position descriptions. That email that went out yesterday, I think, asking for that information. I'm super interested in whatever that was too.
Great. Sounds good. Who else?
Sydney, I'm gonna just put this out there. I'm fairly new to food systems work, so it's like I don't even know what I don't know. So it might be helpful to have a list of these proposed topics, like shared out in a quick little poll or something, and then could vote on which ones were of most interest or something along those lines. To have a menu to choose from. Yeah.
A menu. A menu. You want me to do more work? Come on. Do we have any other last minute thoughts on this topic? And then I'm going to move on to Christy's question at the top of the hour.
I do. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about it from a couple of persons ago when she had kind of reiterated a couple of times the hub label. Well, I think one thing that needs to happen, or at least the conversation is looking at the hubs as it relates to food the same way they did a couple of decades ago with STEM, science, technology, math hubs. And there were literally hundreds of millions of dollars put toward those, even though it was educational for our youth and young adults, but it was under the auspices of hubs where even though ODA, and I think they're continuing to invest in the food and the ag side of things, I think there needs to be a greater effort at the state level where the hubs that we're talking about, they're represented. Because there's about 8 to 12 STEM hubs across the state. Well, because of some of the smaller communities, there's many more hubs in the food conversations and manufacturing. So that's something that I think could be a contribution somewhere in the near future. And definitely I would be willing to, because that's what we're doing out here in Gresham, but something that needs to be brought up.
Got it. I thought I saw, Lauren, yes.
I think it's such a great question that you bring up, Willie. I think one of the things that comes up for me is sometimes those hubs that are created by sort of agency level or industry, you know, sort of oh, this should happen, are like information and support hubs. And they get a certain amount of resources and they're expected to do certain kinds of things. And sometimes some of you as hubs are doing some of those things and you've already learned how to do it, and you should get the resources to do it where you are.
Yes.
And sometimes that money comes with so many strings and expectations that it really means mission creep. So I think sometimes we've thought, oh, this word hub can be confusing. What kind of hub are we? What are our nouns and verbs? But I also think it's really useful for all of you to keep using that term to suggest you can be a hub for many things, but it's up to you what you do. So it always requires clarification with those who would create those kinds of information and support hubs. And I guess the last thing I'll say is there are opportunities that come up to move money for certain support things, like support to producers or connecting producers with certain kinds of training. And if a food hub feels, oh yeah, I already do that, I could use some extra money and support to do that, then that's great. And I think it always takes a really hard, close look at how does that really fit into our existing capacity? Is it an area where we want to grow? So yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, and I would caution, Lauren, like you said, the last response, don't get into it because of the money. Get into it because that's the demand and the need in your community. And the money is kind of the icing on the cake that supports you going into that.
Right. And it's the recognition that you hold those resources and trust, and they shouldn't try to create a whole new thing right next to you to do what you already do.
Right.
Christy, you had a question that you wanted to ask this group about how you are messaging around Thanksgiving or National Day of Mourning.
Yes. Good job recapping the question. Yeah, I have a weekly newsletter that goes out to my customers, and so I really tried to figure out how to, present a message of gratitude. And Thanksgiving is a holiday that I celebrate, while being respectful of it not being a holiday that everyone celebrates, and not being, and more than that, being a anti-holiday basically. So I wondered if anybody else had addressed that in their outreach.
Oh, Carrie, there you are.
I have a postcard that I made out. My primary crop is strawberries. You can't see that, can you?
No.
Anyways,
so-
I just send a postcard out to all my CSA members and all my producers. It says thank you very much, and I write a personal message on the back. So that's my primary communication.
Yeah, I have lots of materials like that. My question is, how does one parse Thanksgiving message when Thanksgiving isn't necessarily a holiday for a lot of people?
Christy, I saw one the other day that was, I can't remember who it came from, but it talked about changing Thanksgiving from Thanksgiving into giving thanks, and just like giving thanks for the harvest and for the land, and sharing educational resources instead of just like, let's have this big Thanksgiving meal. And I thought that was really impactful. It was really simple. And you can make it, as in-depth or as simple as you want. And we share out, like, I definitely try to we do a lot of cultural lessons for Farm to School. And so we write an article for the ESD again that goes out to all the schools and all the teachers, and it shares educational resources too. I think I have the slideshow, and it's not necessarily like to show to kids, but I can share that with you, Christy, or anyone else that came from that Give Thanks campaign. I'll have to remember where that was from and send it out.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, that is a start, but well, so what I ended up doing was having basically half of the newsletter with a thank you message, not unlike the Berry postcard that you have, just a simple graphic, and then talking about how you know, grateful I am for everyone who uses the service, and we're all doing this together, blah blah blah. And then having a separate graphic that I made with a land acknowledgement on it, and with a short explanation that Thanksgiving is because of the impact of European colonization. Thanksgiving is not considered a holiday for everyone. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. So that's what I did. I just wondered if anybody else had done anything else.
It sounds like it's possible that you are maybe the first of us, overtly trying to thread that needle. It's a real needle thread. I was on the phone with somebody recently, and on a personal level, Thanksgiving is a holiday I love because it was a holiday that was really good in my family, and it was the holiday that felt really good in my family. So letting go of that as a tradition feels very painful to me. But also, this celebrating genocide is also very painful, and trying to thread that needle is really, really difficult. And for those of us who do run for profits, it's one of the big sale days of the year, and we have to capitalize on it. So I commend you for being the first of us to step into that space. And it's certainly one that we probably all need to be struggling with and talking about amongst ourselves.
Well, if anyone wants, I can forward it once it publishes on Thursday. If anyone's interested.
Cool. I follow you. I'll see it.
Yeah, I would like that, Christy. And I'm sure the Oregon Food Bank are equity, people, culture. I'm sure they're working on some type of messaging, but I haven't seen anything that's public facing.
Okay.
For sure. But it's definitely been on our radar. I know that like on our holiday calendar, it says Thanksgiving / day of mourning. Like it's like we're acknowledging it. But I haven't seen anything from the communications team. And Sarah might have, maybe, I don't know if she does anything, but.
Well, if anything pops up, definitely send it to me, because I struggle with how to do that in a respectful way.
Agree. I think it would be challenging on our end too, because I think it would be the first time that many folks on our side of the state have maybe even heard.
Have ever even heard that idea? I know.
Right.
I know.
Yeah, I think it's totally new.
Yeah, I'm afraid I do feel like I'm running the risk of putting a few people off with it, but oh well. I tried to make it as non-confrontational as possible.
Christy, when the George Floyd thing was going on, Oregon Farm to School Network sent out an email about Black Lives Matter to their entire network, which was like 10,000 people. And they did have some pushback. I mean, it's 10,000 people all throughout the state. They had some farmers and other folks replied not to contact them anymore, and that, they don't agree with that. And so Oregon Farm to School Network sent out a list. I don't know, maybe you got this, so maybe I'm talking to everybody else, but they sent out that list of producers who said they wanted to opt out because of that Black Lives Matter statement.
No, I never saw that. Wow.
Yeah, she sent it out and said, these are the people that asked to be removed from our list after we sent out the Black Lives Matter statement. So I don't think you're going to get a ton of pushback at this point, but I don't know your region. But if you do, I mean, that's kind of the stance we've taken too. Like, if these people don't support our beliefs, do we want to be supporting them?
Right. Well, and I think, and I have producers, thankfully, this is not a producer newsletter. This is a customer newsletter, which tends to sway a little more liberal, I think. But I do think people sort of know where I stand on things. So I'm hoping at worst, people will roll their eyes and keep scrolling if they don't like it. Catching up on comments.
Christy, thanks for bringing that topic up. Like, I think what I'm taking away from this conversation is that there's probably work that we as a network need to be doing around, we have, by and large, we have social justice values embedded in our missions in some way, shape, or form. And, the fact that we don't quite know how to talk about this right now, is pointing to something that we can work on. So I think, this is another hub topic that we can make larger as a network. And I am going to have Shin talk a little bit about the resource gathering, because we're starting to get a lot of questions for network ideas in the chat. And we do have some resources that we've developed or pulled together. So we've got about 10 minutes, Shin, that you can take to walk us through where to find some of these resources.
Perfect. So I'm going to share my screen in case y'all haven't been to the website in a minute. Right now, we have a specific page for all of the Food Hub. So under our work, underneath the Food Hub, you'll be able to see some general information, being able to sign up for the monthly meetings, and then resources. So here was the 2021 publication of the established emerging food hubs in Oregon. So that's kind of the latest, the most recent one that we have, as well as a number of feasibility reports that have been written over the last few years. And then here are some additional operational guides and FAQs that many of you have shared with us over the last couple of years, including things like SNAP and EBT, retail food box programs. And then down here, these are a couple of the kind of 2-page fact sheets that, they actually do we don't currently have them out, but these can be trifolds.
Tragedy.
And then again, just the feasibility study. So this is where you can find everything. And right up at the very top, this is essentially a repository of all of the materials that this group has pulled together and gathered. So again, you can download the Food Hub feasibility studies, and then here under the Food Hub guides, there's some standard operating procedures, lots of samples of different things like racial equity implementation guides for food hubs and post-harvest handling guides and how to wholesale. There's lots of stuff in here. And if you go back here, there's also all the Food Hub meeting minutes and presentations from this year, as well as from previous years. And then, and then if there's anything that any of you have resource-wise to share into this particular folder, definitely feel free to share those my way, and I can make sure they get added. I guess, does anyone have any questions? Or I'll stop sharing my screen.
Shin, thank you for pulling together all those resources and organizing them. That I just threw a bunch of resources at Shin and said, organize this. And Shin has made it possible for us to actually find them. We've posted, sort of the most handy intro to hubbing onto the website, publicly, and then having the folders organized in such a way that we can find things. It's pretty amazing. And over the last couple of years, all of you have helped us crowdsource an incredible amount of information. At this point, folks reach out to me and have some questions about this. I'm like, hey, here's these meeting notes that you should read through from, and the recording that you should check out from the meeting in February 2020 that, talks about just exactly this issue. So, the power of the network is really starting to make itself evident here. It's pretty cool.
And if there's anything apparent that's missing or things that you're looking for, those are the things that, Sydney and I want to know, because this way we can help source some of those or figure out who in this group or, outside of it have that expertise. And, it's always going to be a work in progress.
All right, y'all. Thanks, Jen, for sharing all that information with us. Do we have any last minute comments before we peace out for the day? Thank you, everyone, for being here and for participating. Christy, it looks like you have something to say.
No, I was just waiting for the big, good job, everybody. See you later.
Good
everybody.
job.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Are we going? I'm going. See you later.
Bye, Christy.
Bye, Christy. Cool. See you later, Shin. I'm gonna
Later.